In the Alaskan interior, the cold doesn't just sit on the land. It digs in with both hands and waits. GPS units go soft and stuttering up here, the magnetic mess of the northern latitudes, chewing the signals the way a dog works a bone. You can stand on a ridge with a $20,000 handset in your glove and watch the little blue dot jump 3 miles sideways for no reason a living man can name. The elite search and rescue teams that still answer the beacons know this. By the summer of 2026, the new mandates required armed escorts for even routine recovery work, rifles slung, magazines locked, eyes on the tree line that never quite stays still. They train for hypothermia, for crevasses, for the kind of wind that can peel the flesh from a man's face in under an hour. What they are not trained for is the quiet that follows when the gear is found and the body is not. There is a particular kind of dread that settles in when you come across a parka left standing upright in waist-deep powder, fully zipped, the snow around it as clean as a hospital sheet. No drag marks, no blood, no tracks of anything with claws or teeth. Just the empty shell of a man who should still be inside it. That kind of discovery doesn't feel like an accident. It feels like a message. The first one belonged to a climber named Royce Ellison, 43, 16 seasons on the big peaks. The sort of man who could read weather the way other people read newspapers. His emergency beacon lit up at 3:17 on a January morning in a saddle high on the south face of Denali, a place no one walks to in the dark without leaving a trail of effort behind them. The recovery team reached the site 6 hours later under a sky the color of wet slate. They found the parka first. It stood alone on a narrow ridge of wind-packed snow, the hood up, the front zipper sealed to the throat. The industrial-grade seals were intact. The powder around the base was undisturbed for 30 yards in every direction. No boot prints leading in, none leading out. Inside the parka, the thermal liner still held a faint ghost of body heat, as if the man had stepped out of it only moments before. Royce's ice axe lay a few feet away, the pick driven clean into the crust, the leash still looped around nothing. One of the rangers, a woman named Delgado, who had pulled 12 bodies off the mountain in her career, crouched and pressed a gloved hand to the snow beside the empty coat. "He didn't fall," she said. Her voice was flat. "He didn't dig. He just left." The rest of the team said nothing. There was nothing useful to say. Later, in the debrief, someone floated the idea of a sudden whiteout and a man somehow stepping out of his own clothing without breaking the seals or the snow. No one believed it. They just wrote it down because the forms required words. The second case started with prints. The tracking team followed a single set of size 11 mountaineering boots across a frozen river valley and up a long, shallow incline toward a sheer granite face that rose 200 feet without a crack or ledge a man could use. The prints were perfect, deep, even, the waffle pattern of the soles clear in the crust. They walked straight at the rock. At the base they stopped. No scramble marks, no blood, no evidence the walker had turned or hesitated. The last print sat half an inch from the stone, as if the man had simply continued walking into it. A 2026 recovery drone swept the face with thermal. For 3 seconds the camera caught a heat signature moving behind the solid rock, human-shaped, roughly the size of a man in heavy gear, before the feed went to static and the drone's motors seized mid-air. The machine dropped 40 feet and buried itself in the snow. When the ground team recovered it, the internal temperature logs showed a spike of cold, so sudden the sensors had registered it as a system failure. The rangers who stood at the base reported a sound. Not a roar, not a voice. A subsonic pressure that lived in the bones of the jaw and the soft places behind the eyes. Several of them vomited. One sat down hard and could not get back up for nearly a minute. Delgado, who had been on the Ellison recovery the year before, looked at the wall and said, "It's listening." No one asked her what she meant. They already knew. The third site was a research station 40 miles from the nearest maintained road, a low cluster of reinforced modules built to ride out 10 years of isolation, 10 years of rations, redundant generators, steel doors rated for polar storms, and the occasional curious grizzly. On a clear night in late March, the station went dark. No distress call, no final transmission, just silence where the daily check-ins had been. When the recovery team forced the outer hatch, they found the heavy steel doors, each one weighing more than a grown man, removed from their frames and stacked neatly against the interior wall like lumber. No pry marks, no explosive residue. The hinges had been sheared clean. Inside, the bunks were made. The kitchen was orderly. A single mug of coffee sat on the table, still faintly warm according to the thermocouple. The audio logs recovered from the station's hardened recorder told the rest. The first night, someone outside had begun calling in the voice of the junior researcher who had been left behind on a supply run 2 weeks earlier. The voice asked to be let in. It knew the names. It knew the passwords. On the second night, it stopped asking and started screaming. Perfect, prolonged human distress, the kind that makes trained men want to open the door. On the third night, the screaming came from inside the walls. The final entry was made by the station chief at 2:41. His voice was steady. He said only. It learned the keycard tones. It's using them. Then the recording ended. Standard predator theory does not account for steel doors stacked like cordwood, or for a voice that can copy a man's fear down to the crack in it. Grizzlies do not mimic. Wolves do not remove hinges. Whatever walked the permafrost that week had patience, and it had an appetite for the sound of people believing they were still in charge. 3 cases, 3 sets of evidence that refuse the rules every ranger is taught from the first day of training. Clothing abandoned without struggle, tracks that end in solid rock, doors removed by something that understands locks and human voices, and the particular way hope sounds when it is about to be used against you. In the spring of 2026, certain zones in the Alaskan interior were quietly reclassified. Search and rescue is no longer authorized to enter them, beacon or no beacon. The maps do not show the boundaries. The briefings do not use the word quarantine. The men and women who still fly the helicopters simply know which coordinates to refuse. Out there, the silence is not empty. It is attentive. It waits for the moment a man trusts the snow under his boots, or the rock at his back, or the voice calling his name from the dark. When that moment comes, the silence moves, and the gear is left behind, clean and upright, for whoever is foolish enough to come looking.